touchdown. And he flips the ball to Rowney to do with what he would.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to give you a breakdown of the 6 basic draft strategies that you can implement into your best ball leagues and carry over into your home leagues to dominate your competition. Now, these draft strategies can get pretty elaborate, so I'll probably do some sub videos later on in the summer, maybe explaining the strategies that I'm using in depth with not only live results of them in an underdog draft, but telling you guys which players to pick. Okay, which is going to help you out a lot more because it's a lot more concrete that way. But this video is more so a basic 101 on each strategy, an overview of it, and some simple pros and cons to get you guys informed on maybe which one might be to your liking. Now, before we get into the 6 strategies, I will say that there is no strategy that's truly the best. Okay, if anything, you just use these 6, have them in the back of your mind, and adapt on the fly. That's why I stressed in the previous video that you guys need to practice these drafts on Underdog 20 seconds per pick, sped up, get your brain tuned up, in shape, ready to go. So by the time you get over to your home leagues where you're doing 60 seconds a pick, you're basically just, you know, you're cruising. I mean, it's like the game on rookie mode, essentially. So have these strategies in the back of your mind. Know that you can pivot to each one of these at any time and not feel ashamed of which one, because there is no one that's the best. It's about what are the 11 guys doing around you, and then maybe pick one of these to kind of contradict what they're doing and get the best value. So let's get into these strategies. The first strategy is probably the most basic, generic, vanilla, balanced strategy. Okay. Now, back in the day when I was, 13, 14, just starting out in fantasy football, a quote unquote balanced draft strategy was basically running back, receiver, pick a quarterback in the 5th round, running back, receiver, pick a tight end, running back, receiver, and call it a day. Now, that's just so robotic and plain that I don't really think, to be honest, if you're going that strategy, I just think you're doomed. And you really are you're not adapting to anything whatsoever, which goes against the entire philosophy of this video. But I will say this, there is a way to go balanced that really isn't robotic in a sense. Just, hey, you look at the board, look at the stack. Okay. Look at the stack of what you have left. Now, there is a famous coach turned draft expert and is now retired from Fox Sports. His name was Jimmy Johnson. I'm sure you guys have heard of him if you've been in tune with the game for a while. He basically drafted in clusters when he was reforming the Dallas Cowboys back in the late 80s and early 90s. Okay. When he was building that dynasty, he basically accumulated a bunch of draft picks, traded around made a bunch of crazy trades because he was the one that kind of pioneered that draft trade chart where some picks were more valuable than others. And he basically said, okay, I like these 3 to 5 players. We'll just wait till, we'll see how the cluster falls to us. Maybe 1 will be gone. Maybe 2 will be gone. Maybe they'll all be gone. And then we'll draft accordingly. So the analogy that I'm trying to make with this is basically if you have heavy receiver left, maybe you say, okay, I'll take a running back, get a receiver later. Maybe if there's heavy running back left, okay, I'll take a receiver now, get a running back later. Adaptability is probably this is where you're going to need it the most in a balanced approach, avoiding the robotic back and forth. The negatives to a balanced draft strategy is you're not really having any sort of edge at a position. You're going to have a subliminal quarterback, you're going to have a subliminal tight end, decent running backs, decent receivers. Now, you won't have any weakness, which is a pro, because there's nothing that you're like, as soon as you leave the draft, like, damn, we're not looking too good at this position. You should be okay at all the positions, but in my opinion, you kind of want to have that edge at one position where, like, yeah, you guys are going to need to come to me for this position and figure it out. There's sort of no identity with your team when you have a balanced team, which is why I call it vanilla and generic. I like to have an identity with my team personally. So out of all the 6, this is probably my least favorite. And I'm not saying you guys can't do it, but not a big fan of the balanced draft strategy. Now, the second draft strategy we're going to talk about is the hero RB draft strategy. And that is basically drafting one elite bell cow running back, okay, in first, second round. He's going to be your RB1. He's going to be the guy that can have the torch, in his hands, carrying your fantasy football team, and all the other running backs will fall underneath him. But the key with the hero RB is you're not going to take another running back until maybe round 6, earliest, maybe even round 7. You're going to stack your team with get a quarterback 3rd, 4th, 5th round, and then just fill up on your wide receivers. Now, the strategy behind this is basically that you're avoiding the running back dead zone, okay? Now, I want to give a shout out to my boy Ron Stewart out there. He was the one that kind of put me onto that term. Now, the dead zone is basically avoiding those middle round, 3rd, 4th, 5th round running backs. How many times have you guys got burned by some 3rd, 4th, 5th round running back? A guy that's just kind of in that lane. He's not really an elite running back by any means. He's just there because he has a high volume projected towards him. Maybe a guy like a Zamir White last year, Najee Harris, Gus Edwards, Alexander Madison. I can go on and give you a bunch of examples. I think you guys get the point of what I'm talking about. Okay. Those are running backs we want to avoid. Okay. When you're talking about a hero running back, you want to get a guy, a Jonathan Taylor, even a Bijan, a Gibbs, Barkley, one elite running back, and then load up on those receiver depth, because even with those receivers in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, there's a chance that they're going to outperform the running backs there. History says that not only are they going to outperform them, but they have a better chance of staying healthy. So keeping that in mind, that's why that running back dead zone, it really doesn't pay off. A lot of these seasoned league running backs are either guys that are early on, their 1st, 2nd round picks, or they're down in the 7th to 8th round. Like last year, the Bengals running back Chase Brown, he was a 7th to 8th round pick, and he ended up finishing top 10. I think Kamara was even down in like the 7th to 8th round. Those were really the only 2 guys that come to mind as top 10 guys. The rest of the guys up there, Bijan, Gibbs, Barkley, those guys were all round 1, round 2 picks. JT, so there weren't guys up there that they either came out of the woodworks or they were there to begin with. There wasn't really any mid-tier guys that took a significant leap. So avoid the running back dead zone. That's really the key with this strategy. Now, here's the con to this strategy. If you lose that top guy, you're kind of screwed at the running back position. Okay. So you're kind of banking on one guy really being, the guy that's going to carry the torch, lead the way, have over, close to 1,400 yards, and basically make it so when you're filling up your lineup for the week, you're going to have him, you'll have your receivers, you'll have your quarterback, you'll have somewhat of a tight end, and you'll just need to balance between 2 to 3 guys based on matchup for that running back 2 spot. The thin running back depth really isn't, that's really the only thing that's going to hold you back in this case. But more times than not, I'm a fan of the hero RB strategy, because especially when it comes to best ball, I'm just going to take my one guy, and I'm just tired of playing the guessing game with the middle round running backs. Those guys just don't have a history of doing well. Usually the guys that are there are guys that are kind of, you're not feeling warm and fuzzy about these guys. So I like getting my ace, laying off. I'll get a bunch of guys later on. Hopefully one breaks through, and that'll be that. Now, the next strategy we'll talk about is even riskier than the hero RB strategy, the zero RB strategy. Okay, and this is honestly one of my favorite draft strategies. It was really considered a contrarian draft strategy up until about 3 to 4 years ago, where it's basically now the new norm in a sense. If you guys play in best ball drafts, and we'll talk about this again later on in the summer, but a lot of people are doing this strategy. Receivers fly off the board. Okay, they fly off the board. It's usually because a lot of people are doing this strategy, and that's where I've been more so this year, just at a quick glance so far, more of a hero RB guy, because there are some running backs that'll slip to like the bottom, like Bucky Irvin for me. I like him a lot. He'll fall to the bottom of the 2nd round. Josh Jacobs and JT will even fall to the 3rd round, top of the 3rd round, and I'll scoop him up. So, there's some strategies right there that that'll work out in my favor, but I kind of like to be a guy that gets the receivers as well myself. And that's really the number one pro with this is you don't have receivers is probably the hardest position to find on the waiver wire. I mean, there's just not a lot of receivers that come out of the woodworks and they're really good. I mean, Puka Nacua was basically one of a kind, but a lot of receivers out there that end up getting picked up, they're just not that good of players. I mean, there's really no other way to put it. Now, a quarterback, he might, like a rookie quarterback gets picked up later on in the year, there's a chance that he's just getting better as a player. Okay. A tight end that gets picked up, he might have been the guy that's just promoted to injury, or, we kind of overlooked, which happens all the freaking time because there's only about 12 to 13 tight ends that get picked in fantasy drafts, and there's 32 starting tight ends. So the odds of getting one that slipped the cracks is pretty likely. And the running back position, that's probably the easiest position to step in and supplement what the last guy did from a statistical perspective, because there's really nothing that changes in the game plan. There's tons of good running backs all across the league. Now, there's obviously a difference between, let's say a Jonathan Taylor and whoever the backup running back in for the Colts is, but the chance that the statistics change are only going to be this much. I mean, not saying that the guy will go out there and get 150 yards, but if he's going to get the same opportunity, there's a chance that he could put up the same amount of stats. With the receiver, if, Jalen Naylor on the Vikings, if he's still there, is going to step in for Justin Jefferson, he's not going to put up Justin Jefferson numbers. I mean, that's just not how the game works. So you want to maximize your receiver value. Now, another thing that's a pro and a con. The con is you're kind of like, okay, what do we do now at running backs? You're going to have to rely on injuries to the running back position early on to kind of help you out. Now, last year, there weren't a ton of injuries to the big-time running backs. A lot of the big-time running backs last year, they got drafted early on. They ended up staying healthy, and they flourished through the entire season. But with the zero RB strategy, you're kind of banking on that. And not only will that help you if you get a running back off the waiver wire, but it's going to hurt the guy who drafted that running back first, second round, because that's his first, second round pick, and his running back is gone for multiple games. So there's a chance that you could really pass a lot of guys as the year goes along. And down the line, if you end up getting a couple starting running backs off the waiver wire, combine that with your elite receivers, combine that with the fact that with the zero RB strategy, you'll have room to take an elite quarterback and probably have a decent tight end as well. You're looking at a pretty good team, okay? So how good are you on the waiver wires? To me, I love the waiver wires. I said it in the previous episode. It's my favorite, probably my favorite part of the fantasy week is rounding up the waiver wires, scouring through players, and just trying to build the team, okay? I love that part of it. So personally, I'm a big fan of the waiver wire, which is why I like this strategy, because this strategy right here is going to where you're going to have to put on your thinking cap and get in the waiver wires and dig. So this is, if you like that, I would do this strategy. If you don't like that, I would probably avoid this strategy. Now, the next strategy is basically an opposite approach to the strategy we just talked about, and that is the robust RB strategy. Now, when I first got into fantasy, this was my favorite strategy, because I wanted to stack as many. I was playing in standard leagues, number one, but I love stacking the running backs, and I felt like, the receivers are a little bit more flexible. Now, as the year's gone along, I've sort of changed my stance on that. And I believe if you miss out on some elite receivers, I think you're going to be struggling late in the year when some receivers just don't get the volume that they're supposed to get. Having a dominating running back room is basically going to give you a high floor. It's going to give you a chance that you're going to go out week one, even if you have a running back in the flex. You'll go out week one, you're probably going to have a strong outlook because all your running backs are going to be healthy. They're going to be guys that are going to be featured in the game plan. And regardless, there's no chance that Saquon Barkley won't get the ball. There's no chance that Josh Jacobs won't get the ball. These guys are going to get the ball. That's just part of the game plan. Now, there's a chance that, CeeDee Lamb might not catch a pass for a quarter. There's a chance that, let's say, A.J. Brown might go a couple quarters without a target. There's a chance that could happen. It's not likely, but there's no chance that the other stuff won't happen. And I think I could figure out later on in the waiver wires, I can have a better time trying to figure out the running back position than I can the receiver position. Kind of the pros that we talked about in the last concept are going to be sort of the cons in this concept. If your running backs get hurt doing the robust RB strategy, you're truly SOL. There is no chance you could really come back from that unless you start handcuffing guys. And in my opinion, handcuffing guys is kind of a safe way out. And you got to have some sort of risk in your fantasy draft if you want to win a league. So to me, just playing it safe is so middle of the road. And it's not a way to win, in my opinion. I just think it's a way to not be embarrassed, maybe. But in my opinion, I don't think it's the way to go. Now, the next couple strategies are basically going to focus around the quarterback and tight end positions more so than the running back and receiver positions. The first one I'll talk about, strategy number 5, is late round quarterback strategy. Now, this is a strategy I think this year is actually very beneficial because there are a good amount of quarterbacks in the 9th, 10th round, even starting in the 8th round, let's say, that are just available for the taking. Okay. You want to talk about Mahomes is going in the 8th round, and then you get to that 9th, 10th round where you have a Bo Nix, you have Brock Purdy, you have Dak, you have Jordan Love, you have Herbert, CJ Stroud is down there. There's a lot of decent quarterbacks that you could scoop up, and you only need one quarterback. That's it. You only need one quarterback. You don't need to get multiple quarterbacks, and unless you're playing best ball, even so in best ball, you can grab 2 quarterbacks. But if you're playing in a season-long home league, you only need one quarterback, okay? You don't need to hog them. There's a lot of guys out there that want to hog the quarterbacks and stuff like that. Eventually, those guys are going to trade you the quarterbacks for cheap because they're not going to have the depth in other areas where they need to have it. So as long as you get one guy that's solid, 16-game starter in the top 15 or so conversation, you'll be able to hold yourself over a little bit. And at the same time, this gives you more opportunities in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round to capitalize on premier running back and receivers and have them as kind of your aces in your lineup and the guys that you know are going to be bona fide locks to go out there and produce every single week. Now, there are some times where last year, to give you an example of Josh Allen was the MVP of the league. He had a pretty damn good production. Okay, I mean, there was a lot of points that he was putting up. He had a 50-point game one week. So if you had Josh Allen in your team, there's odds are you're going to win that game. Lamar Jackson, another example, he had some 40-point games last year. And the difference between that and even a good quarterback who will have a 20-point game, that's almost like having another player in your lineup. So there's a trade-off in that sense. But I believe with the amount of guys that are there in the late rounds this year, there's a chance that you can get solid production and make up for it with the early on guys. So you might be traded in a little inconsistency and lacking that elite production, but you're going to have depth at the other positions. You're going to get good value on your quarterback because a lot of guys, once they stack up on the elite quarterbacks, those are usually the guys that are quarterback hungry. A lot of the other guys, they'll probably be in the same boat as you, kind of just waiting around for one of the late round guys. And you're able to get a guy 8th, 9th, 10th round. I mean, I've gotten like my first quarterback in the 10th round, and it was like Bo Nix, and I like Bo Nix this year. So I'm happy with that as a whole in terms of the value. So I think there's a lot of value to this strategy and bang for the buck, which is really a key overall term with fantasy, finding the bang for the buck. And then my last strategy that I think is probably the best out of these 6 and my favorite strategy, punt the tight end, forget about the tight end, and just draft a bunch of guys late and play on the matchups. Guys, there's 32 starting tight ends out there. Okay, how many? I'm sick and tired of hearing people out there that say, "Oh man, if you don't get Brock Bowers, George Kittle, or McBride, I don't know how you're going to get a tight end, man. They're just not. And the other guys aren't that good." Well, okay, they're not elite. Fair, all right, but are they that good to where you got to invest a 2nd and 3rd round pick in these guys? I don't think so. Okay. In my opinion, there's going to be a chance that you can get one tight end for very, very cheap. That's why you draft 2 tight ends late. I've said this multiple times. Draft 2 tight ends late and just hope to God one of those guys hit. And if they don't, scan the waiver wire. The odds are you'll find a guy on the waiver wire. If you haven't already, guys, go and watch the first 7-8 minutes of the tight ends video that I just put out, about a week ago at this point. I basically explained the science behind sort of the lack of production and the inconsistency from some of the top tight ends over the years. If you were picking Travis Kelce round 1 to round 2 to round 4, whatever, the last couple of years, you weren't getting your good bang for the buck. Sam Laporta was a bust last year for fantasy. Mark Andrews really hasn't delivered for you 4th round. Dalton Kincaid, 4th round bust. There's a lot of examples out there where there's just inconsistency at a lot of the top tight ends last year. I don't think Brock Bowers will have the same stat line that he had last year. Okay, McBride, he might have the same stat line because I think his touchdowns will go up, but he had a lot of catches last year. So I just don't think for a 2nd, 3rd, even a 4th round pick for that to carry over, I think that's way too steep of a risk. And I'm just going to completely punt the tight end, avoid those guys. And when you guys have my draft board available for purchase later on in the month, going into August, I'm basically going to take those guys off my board or move them down to a point to where Brock Bowers is there in the 4th round, fine, pick him. But at that point, what are we talking about? I mean, what kind of league are we playing in? It doesn't really matter at that point. You're probably playing against a bunch of mopes. So that odds are that's not going to happen. But screw it, okay? I'm not touching early tight ends this year, and I could be totally wrong for this stance, but I'm freeing up my draft capital. I'm going to use all my top draft capital on a quarterback, getting 1, maybe 2 running backs, and then using 4 to 5 receivers in those first 7 to 8 picks. And that's going to be my skeleton base for the team that I'm going to have going into the 8th, 9th, 10th round. Where I'll eventually select my first tight end and then grab a tight end late, maybe like a Mason Taylor or something like that, hoping for a breakout. And that'll be that. All right. And if I don't make it because of a tight end, so be it. I'm gonna live with that. That's probably the con that I'm most confident living with, aside from trying to find the running back, because that could be a pain in the butt too. But I love scanning the waiver wire. This is probably the second most strategy where you're gonna have to second most waiver wire inducing strategy, to put it like that. So where you're gonna have to be on top of it, check the waivers for tight ends every single week, play the matchups, this and that. But if you don't love that, don't do it. But I love it. So that's why I'm going to be playing that draft strategy a lot this year. I already have, and it's probably my favorite. It's not the best. I want to emphasize that. Just because it's my favorite doesn't mean it's the best. You guys can have your own favorites, and you might think that something else is the best. That's fine. But that's my personal favorite, and that's the one that I'm going to be implementing the most. So there you guys have it. Those are the 6 basic draft strategies out there that you can implement into your best ball leagues and then carry over into your home leagues. If you guys haven't checked out the tight ends video, if you guys haven't checked out the best ball 101 video, make sure you check them out and get you all caught up and informed on some of the basics, the sleepers, and the breakdowns that we're going to be doing on this channel, getting you guys ready to go to dominate your competition. All right. We're only about 2, maybe 3 weeks away from the draft board coming out. I'm going to have a link coming up for that pretty soon. I want you guys to stay tuned on, follow the Instagram, follow the TikTok, link in the description below. Make sure you guys tap in, man, and stay updated to what we're doing. All right. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.